guys, welcome to my first proper drive of Audi's R8 GT. The iconic R8 is soon to go out of production, and this GT is the result of Audi Sport throwing absolutely everything at their final edition. They'll only build 333 of these, and 15 of those are going to lucky customers in the UK. This particular press car is number 332 out of 333, so I'm sure it's going to have some added value down the road, although I have already put about 1,500 miles on it. The car was delivered to me on Friday, and my original plan was to take it to Wales, but by Saturday morning the weather predictions were absolutely horrendous. I sat at home, mulled it over for a while, and by Saturday evening I'd booked a Eurotunnel over to France, and here I am Tuesday morning in the middle of the beautiful French Alps. They're priced at £198,333. See what they did there? 333 units. And they're available in 3 colours: Daytona Grey, a fancy red that I've forgotten the name of, and this absolutely gorgeous Suzuka Grey. This isn't just a regular R8 with some GT badging and fancy bodywork on it. That rear carbon fibre swan neck wing produces nearly 300 kilos of downforce at top speed. We've also got aero around the front, this beautiful big carbon splitter, carbon canards, and then you've got those big extruding sills along the side of the car. It just adds to everything, and aesthetically I think it looks spot on. Then you factor in these beautiful lightweight forged 20-inch wheels which are unique to the GT, and they show off the standard carbon ceramic brakes. I think it all comes together really, really well. Underneath this glass hatch we'll find the iconic mid-mounted 5.2 litre V10. In this GT it produces the full fat 620 horsepower and 565 newton meters of torque. It will rev to a ridiculous 8,700 RPM, and in fact to extract most of the performance out of this GT you need to be between about 5,000 and 8,000 RPM. But that's not too much of an issue because the boys and girls at Audi Sport have shortened the gear ratios on this car's 7-speed DSG gearbox, and that's fantastic when you're out here in the beautiful Alps. It's not so great when you're sitting on the motorway on the journey over here. In fact, I was sitting at about 3,500 RPM at the French speed limit of roughly 85 miles an hour, and I struggled to produce more than about 19 miles to the gallon. But I think someone that has 200 grand to spend on an R8 GT is probably not going to be too fussed about that, but I thought it was worth mentioning. All of that power and torque is fed to the rear axle alone, just like Audi's LMS race car. And that's not an issue because these rear wheels are clad with 305 section rubber. Out of the box, the R8 GT comes on Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres, which would have been perfect for today. Not so perfect for my journey on the way down here yesterday though, because much of that was torrential rain and loads of standing water. So I'm grateful that this particular press car has Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres. In terms of claim performance figures, this will do a 0 to 62 time of just 3.4 seconds, again backing up the fact that it has no issue with grip. And it will do 0 to 124 miles an hour in just 10.1 seconds. Absolute madness. It will go into a top speed of 199 miles an hour, which is slightly down on the regular rear-wheel drive performance. And a lot of that has to do with the shorter gear ratios and the extra drag from the aero. Jumping inside, and the GT theme continues. Down here we have R8 GT engraved into the carbon, and 332 out of 333 units, which is pretty cool. It's nice and subtle. There's carbon and Alcantara absolutely everywhere. This beautiful honeycomb Alcantara roof lining, the wheel is lovely. These gorgeous R8 GT specific bucket seats, they're very supportive and very comfortable, although the backrest isn't adjustable, just like the carbon buckets that you get in a Porsche. So you can move backwards and forwards manually, and actually up and down electronically, although it doesn't go down far enough. but we'll talk more about that once we get it out on the road. But in terms of the way they look, they're just stunning. And they actually have a built-in Bang & Olufsen speaker system, which is standard fit on the R8 GT. You might also notice there's a bit of a red theme in here. We have red seat belts, we have red stitching everywhere on the dashboard, on the wheel, the door cards. It's absolutely everywhere. And that harks back to the original R8 GT from 2012. The last thing to talk about in here that is R8 GT specific is this button on the wheel. It's a checkered flag, and if you hit it, it engages performance mode. You can hear the idle revs picking up a little bit, but if you turn it, well, that gives you access to the 7-stage torque rear mode. Think of it as a 7-stage traction control. At the end of last year, I was lucky enough to go to the R8 GT launch, which was mostly track specific. So if you missed that video, there's a link to it up here. Whilst I was there, they had a skid pan, and I was able to properly play around with this 7-stage torque rear mode. And I found it to be really, really effective. When you had it on maximum, it felt like there was barely anything keeping you in shape. It would allow you to get some big angles and some hero skids. And when you turned it down towards the minimum, well, it reeled everything in a little bit, and it just meant that you could keep your foot planted out of a hairpin. It would allow a little bit of slip, but it would control everything very, very well. I was playing around with it yesterday in the wet, and it does help you, but you can get caught out, so don't rely on that. Most of the time, I prefer to drive this car in these conditions, especially with everything switched off. I've been extremely fortunate over the past 11 or 12 years. I have driven pretty much every variation of the wonderful R8, first generation, second generation, Quattros, Pluses, Performances, the original GT, you name it, I have driven it. This GT, well, it has a lot to live up to, mainly because there's a car called the R8 rear-wheel drive Performance, which might lack 50 horsepower compared to this, but it also costs £131,000. That's almost 70 grand less than an R8 GT. Is this worth it? Thanks to those gorgeous 20-inch lightweight wheels, those standard fit carbon ceramic brakes, and a few other small weight-saving measures, this R8 GT actually weighs 20 kilos less than the R8 rear-wheel drive Performance. And although that's still 1,570 kilos, it's not bad when you consider the amount of performance that is on offer. And also the fact that, well, this car is built and sold in 2023, so it's cluttered up with OPF filters, passenger and pedestrian safety aids, you name it, it's pretty much got it. They've revised the suspension, added some negative camber. They've even replaced the front anti-roll bar with a beautiful looking carbon one. But unfortunately, you're never going to see that. I was lucky enough to see it at the launch. Such a lovely, lovely component, but a bit like an e-Venturi intake, it's hidden the majority of the time. There's also an optional coilover suspension kit. This particular press car doesn't have one, but the one that I tried out at the launch on the circuit did have that kit fitted. Without trying them back to back or side by side on a road like this, it would be hard to say whether it's actually beneficial on the road. But what I can say is whatever they've done to the standard suspension is just unreal. The front end grip is magic. It's just an absolute beast. R8s tend to understeer in general, they really do. They've always suffered from it. It's a good way of setting up a car to be safe, so that anyone that sits behind the wheel of it, especially something with 600 horsepower and rear wheel drive, well, if it has understeer, then you're less likely to wrap it around a lamppost. But they've added clearly some grip to the front end, because it's the same width tyres, they're only 245 section, and yet they dig into the tarmac so well. And that really helps with the handling of this car. Once you reach the apex, the way this car exits is just awesome. You're losing nothing in this weather against the Quattro version, you really not. It's unreal. Something that has been an issue for me in the R8 in general is its driving position. It doesn't seem to suit people like me with a lanky torso. Even with these beautiful bucket seats, I'm still sitting too high. And in fact, if you watch my original video on this on track, when I've got a helmet on, well, I'm kind of slumped over like this because I can't physically fit in. So just bear that in mind if you're looking at an R8 in general, or if you're lucky enough to be looking at an R8 GT and you are relatively tall. It doesn't compare driving position wise to something like Porsche's 911, where you sit a lot lower and definitely suits taller drivers. Something else that is a little bit annoying on a really twisty road like I've spent most of today on are these sweeping A-pillars. You see, this one in particular does get in your way when you're looking through right-hand turns. I remember noticing that when I had this car out on track last year, and whenever I've had previous R8s out on track, when you're looking through the corner, these A-pillars do get in the way. But again, that's a bit of a modern car trait. They're getting safer and safer. Of course, these have got to support a lot of car if it does end up on its roof, but it's definitely worth talking about. Something else is rear visibility. On a regular R8, it's not amazing, and in this one with that beautiful swan neck wing, well, it's very limited. But thankfully, these door mirrors do a very good job. They're nice and big, they work really well. On a lot of supercars, door mirrors are afterthoughts, not on the R8, and that's kind of a trend in this car. I mean, it is the everyday supercar, isn't it? It's something that you expect to work and something that you expect to be able to use on a daily basis. Very much like Porsche's 911, it really is a usable sports or supercar. This is definitely a supercar though. Over 600 horsepower, this much performance, there's no way that I would call this a sports car. In the dry at least, this is the quickest R8 I've ever driven, without question. It's unreal. Those shorter gear ratios really help. As I said in the intro, below about 5,000 RPM, there's really not much power or torque. So you're constantly up around 5, 6, 7, nearly 8. And those gear changes, well, Audi Sport don't claim that they've done anything to this gearbox as far as I know, but it definitely shifts faster, it's more ferocious, especially under load, about half throttle when you're shifting up. It's so quick, it's like a sequential box. You think, and it changes gear. It's unreal. And the best thing about it is when you come into a corner like this, you pull it and it goes into first. It gives you those low gears, which is really important when you're pushing on the road, but especially when you're pushing on track. Come through here, pull second, gives me second. Lovely. Through here, first, gives me first. I know it's not rocket science, but a lot of the Volkswagen DSG boxes don't always give you the gear that you want. And also, this will hold it in gear when you're in manual like I am now. So let's go down into first and let's see what happens. That's the limiter. Did you see that shift when it went into second? Wow. It's just savage, this car. It's really savage, but it's really usable and really playful. I couldn't really think of a better car to be up here in. Sure, 992 GT3 would rival it. Steering feel is good, but I wish the rack was a little bit quicker. When things get slippery, you really have to be on your A game, because this is a mid-engine supercar after all, and once she starts to rotate, oh yes, you've got to be on it. Let's come up with a bit of a summary, a bit of a conclusion. I think there's no denying or no doubting that the current rear-wheel drive performance R8 is the best bang for your buck, if you like. It loses very little to this car. It retains the majority of the wonderful ingredients, and it costs nearly £70,000 less. But as with so many of these special editions, be it from Audi, Porsche, BMW, cars like the M3 CS, there's critics out there that will say, oh, it's not worth the extra money, but in my opinion, it definitely is if you can afford it. If 200k isn't a big deal to you, then this is definitely a better car. It is the best R8 I've ever driven, and what a way to bid farewell to this wonderful, wonderful car. Really is incredible, and I'm so glad that I put the effort in and came out here, because this trip, it's not sponsored. This trip, a bit like my GT3 touring trip, has cost me an arm and a leg. Even fuel costs alone, in fact, they are the main costs. I mean, they must be fast approaching 1,500 quid. But I might not get this opportunity again, and as you hopefully know if you watch a lot of my content, when I get these opportunities, I make the most of them. I don't take something like this to London and drive it around in 20 zones. I want to take it to a place like this, a place that it deserves. I want to really get under its skin. I want to push it to my limits on quiet, open roads like this. I really think that has exposed the brilliance of the R8 GT. And if you are watching this video and you like what you're seeing and you're not subscribed, then please, can I urge you to hit that subscribe button. And last but not least, I have to say a big thanks to my friends at Petrolhead Tours for helping me out with some of the logistics on this trip. Cheers, guys. If you're not familiar with Petrolhead Tours, they are the best Euro road trip company. I've filmed plenty of content with them over the years, so make sure you check out the channel for those videos, and I'll link their website below in the description. I'm going to switch these cameras off, but before I do that, I'll bring you up to the top of Col de la Bonnet, which is just around the corner here. One of the highest paved roads in the world. I've been up here many times actually, and most recently on that wonderful GS. It's lovely and quiet. What a view. What a spot. Wow. Cheers guys, I'll see you at the next video. Quite literally on top of the world.